The sun blazed relentlessly in the alien desert, its fiery rays scorching the land as it seemed to set the very atmosphere aflame. In the midst of the harsh, unforgiving expanse, a lone figure staggered across the cracked earth, her body covered in layers of bright purple clothing to shield herself from the intense heat. Her face was pale, her silver eyes strained, and her breath came in shallow gasps. Vesira, a young alien from the distant planet of Euthrana, had always known the stories of her kind's great strength, resilience, and ability to endure extreme conditions. Yet, even she could feel the weight of the oppressive heat on her shoulders, pushing her to the brink of collapse. Her once proud four-legged companions she had raised from the very first moments of their lives, were faltering by her side. The creatures, resembling large insect-like beings with segmented bodies and spindly legs, had been loyal to her for years. They had helped her explore the desert, navigate its traps, and even defend her from predators. But now, they were suffering, their bodies shriveled and weak from the lack of water. The small oasis they had found only a day earlier had dried up completely in the face of the unbearable heat. "Hold on," Vesira whispered, her voice barely audible against the hum of the blistering wind. She knelt down and placed a trembling hand on the closest creature, its limbs twitching in exhaustion. Her once vibrant skin had dulled to a sickly shade as the heat drained her energy. "Just a little longer. I know we're close." But the oasis, once their salvation, was nowhere to be found. The small crater that had once held the precious water was now a dry, cracked pit. Her heart sank as she realized that without water, the creatures, her only companions, would not survive the day. The alien girl had no choice but to look elsewhere for help, and the only place she could think of was the space station orbiting far above. The human outpost, a tiny colony of Earthlings, had been a source of odd curiosity to her for some time. The humans had long been viewed by her people as primitive, strange, and unsophisticated compared to the technological marvels of Euthrana. But they had something her people lacked: compassion. And now, in her moment of desperate need, Vesira had no choice but to rely on them. As she looked up to the sky, the distant speck of the human colony station gleamed like a faraway star. It would be a long journey, but she had to try. Gripping the last remaining water flask at her side, Vesira urged her creatures forward. Hours passed as Vesira stumbled through the burning desert, pushing herself past the brink of exhaustion. Her feet bled from the rough terrain, and her once sleek purple garments were tattered and torn. Her companions dragged behind, their legs barely moving, but they still tried to follow her as if their lives depended on it. By the time she reached the spaceport, the colony was closing for the night. The harsh desert winds howled in the distance as Vesira entered the human-run outpost. Her heart pounded as she approached the docking bay. She had no idea how they would react to her presence. The humans, always cautious when it came to alien visitors, had their weapons ready when they saw her approach. The sight of the exhausted alien girl, her companions barely able to move, was enough to make them pause. They were hesitant, unsure whether to extend a helping hand or see her as a threat. "What are you doing here?" a human soldier demanded, his rifle aimed in her direction. His voice was firm, but there was a slight quiver of uncertainty as he eyed her. Vesira dropped to her knees, her breath ragged. She could feel her heart racing as she opened her water flask, holding it out toward the humans. "Please," she gasped. "Water. My companions, they need water." The soldier hesitated, his brow furrowed. His gaze flickered to the two lifeless creatures slumped at her feet. The alien girl was no longer a threat. She was a fragile, desperate creature, as vulnerable as any living being. His gaze softened. "Why didn't you just ask for help sooner?" he asked, lowering his weapon. I didn't have a choice, Vesira answered, her voice quivering with exhaustion. I thought I could make it on my own, but I was wrong. The soldier looked toward the other humans who had gathered around, unsure what to do. The group of people standing in the docking bay were unsure whether to pity her, fear her, or simply ignore her. But there was one among them who did not hesitate. A middle-aged human man, older than the others and with a grizzled face, stepped forward. His expression was calm, his eyes sharp, but they held a certain warmth. "Get her inside, now," the man said with authority, and the others immediately obeyed. They rushed to her side, supporting Vesira as they guided her into the station. As they moved, the man's eyes turned to the dehydrated creatures, struggling to breathe. Without another word, he ordered a medic to tend to them. Once inside the station, Vesira was given medical attention, and the humans began to work on reviving her companions. The man who had commanded the rescue operation approached her, sitting by her side. "You're lucky we had some water left," he said, his voice gentle now. "But you're going to need more than that to survive." Vesira could only nod weakly. She had expected to be treated with suspicion, even disdain, but instead, the humans were treating her like someone in need, someone worthy of help. She felt a strange sense of gratitude and awe toward these creatures who had never shown her people such kindness before. Their condition? Vesira managed to ask, still weak from dehydration. "They'll survive," the man said, nodding toward her creatures who were now receiving fluids. "But only because you made it here in time." She looked up at him, her silver eyes wide with surprise. "You saved them?" The man smiled. "We're not like your people who would let an alien creature die because it's not one of their own. You may think we're primitive, but in the end, we care for each other. And that includes you." The realization hit Vesira like a bolt of lightning. She had always believed that humans were weak, selfish, and incapable of understanding the needs of other species. She had believed they would turn away, leave her to die in the desert with her creatures. But instead, they had given her something she had never known: true compassion. "Thank you," she whispered, tears welling in her eyes. The man gave a small nod, his expression softening. "It's just what we do. We help each other." And as the human colony worked tirelessly to restore the life of the alien girl and her creatures, Vesira knew that she had learned something important. It was not strength or power that made a species great. It was kindness, sacrifice, and the willingness to stand by those who needed it most. And in that moment, Vesira understood that the human spirit was capable of far greater things than she could have ever imagined. In the face of suffering, they had chosen to extend their compassion, giving a last drop of water to save those who needed it most.